tuna, but I think I paid too much.
I always wear my mask and wash my hands after going home.
I am the king of the ring.
Welcome to the Japan Wut Podcast, episode 217. And I am your host, Matthew PMBigelow.com. And I'm coming at you from the Aizumicho Studios in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan, the armpit of Asia. Covering Japan Society 5.0, AI market trends, rising conflict in the Indo-Pacific, the supply chain wars, depopulation, migration, and more. We thank you for coming along the adventure that is today's show. Yeah, moving into the end of June here, 2025, getting hot, getting pretty spicy. Today, what we're going to look at and analyze in terms of where Japan is in relation to other things is the supply chain wars, and we'll take a look at some AI development on the infrastructural level. I got a song as well that makes fun of the goofy consumer products we are inundated with right now, the stupid AI products. And I also wanted to take a look at a World Economic Forum report discussing what Japan is doing to deal with its over-tourism. I wonder what that is, huh? Good old World Economic Forum just sticking their nose in where it totally belongs. We all love them, truly. So let's take a look at the supply chain wars. Die for the war, everybody moves. Die for the good, die for the war, die for the war. So the supply chain wars is this very nebulous giant thing. I started looking at it from a supply chain war perspective during COVID with the lockdowns and the shutdowns, and then how policy was kind of being used to hoard or increase prices for shipping containers here, and Japan is stuck between America and Asia with its alignment with the G7 ideologically, but being geographically positioned in Asia. How during this time it seemed that China was doing a rapid expansion on its Belt and Road Initiative, which most people in the West just assume that it's a debt trap and everything sucks about it. But when you look at it, there's a lot of interested parties. And a lot of this has to do with the supply chain wars of weaponization of the supply chains. And you talk to some people, and that might mean Israel's use of putting bombs and explosives into the Hezbollah pagers that they were using and blow them all up via signal. Like they released some sort of signal apparently, and it just made all of these pagers blow up and basically decapitated Hezbollah. That's one aspect of the weaponization. But another aspect of it is, this was kind of concerning to me, was when the Nord Stream blew up in connecting Germany to Russia there to provide more cheap natural gas to Germany. The result of that was Europe having to turn in large part towards America to import liquid natural gas, which is a lot more expensive and riskier. And I can see the American perspective on that, because if they're paying for European defense, but Europe is just importing cheap natural gas, it's good for Europe, of course, but you're going to make friends or not make friends based on those types of movements and so on. So the way that affected a position that I was worried about regarding Japan. I'm a Canadian living in Tokyo here, so with the family. So I have mud in the game. Is that what it said? I have a dog in this hunt, although that doesn't sound good when referring to my family, my wonderful family. So I was thinking, what if this conflict between Taiwan and China was exacerbated so that a bunch of Asian countries would eventually start blowing each other up, and the end result of that would be lack of trust between these countries, lack of infrastructure between these countries, and all these countries would basically be forced to turn to America for its energy supplies, because America would come in and save the day. Obviously, it's what it does. That's its role. It's just a day saver. I am America, and I am here to save the day. So I was worried about that, because we can think about China and Taiwan and how they should be separated or be together, and there's this, that, and the other about that. But what about the people behind the scenes wanting to manipulate that situation to turn it into some sort of massive advantageous situation for America? Because it doesn't matter if you are a left-leaning person or a right-leaning person, you still use oil. You still need to have energy imports from a place. And so whether, just to take an example of a Japanese car driver, if they're a super right winger or a super left winger, well, both of those people go to the petrol station to fill up their tank at the end of the day. So energy kind of is on top of all of that. It's beyond politics. Now, today, what I would like to look at with that in mind is shifting this flashpoint, because a lot of these conflicts and flashpoints, on one side, you have the G7, basically, and on the other side, you have BRICS, basically. It's just how I low resolutionize it so we don't get bogged down in the nitty-gritty details when we just want to talk about shit. And Taiwan is being positioned as ideologically on the G7 side, and China is, of course, with the BRICS side. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And now it's also Iran and Cambodia and all these other places. So BRICS is expanding. Whether it's Iran or Israel or even Palestine, on one side you would have the G7 with Israel, and on the other side with Iran you have the BRICS with them. And we can say that Russia has vowed to assist Iran, but we can also look at the economic development that's been ongoing between China and Iran as well. And how does this affect Japan? Because while we can say that America and Japan have this wonderful trade relationship with each other, when American politicians are not looking at Japan, they are not thinking about Japan. And these decisions that they make while they're not thinking about Japan can affect Japan, and especially regarding the supply chain war, especially when we're looking at potential effects in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. And I'm going to tie this into Japan by saying Japan is kind of a more or less a G7 subsidiary to the Americas, kind of usually goes along with what the Americas say geopolitically. Just for example, Prime Minister Ishiba said the other day, Iran shouldn't have a nuclear bomb. I'm paraphrasing. And so there's that. But Japan relies on the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has a big part of that maritime border on. Japan relies on like 90% of its oil imports or energy imports from countries that ship via the Strait of Hormuz or the Straits of Hormuz or the Hormuz Strait, however you want to say it. So if American policy supports Israel to a really crazy claim, because now we don't have this logical supply chain network where I have widgets and you have bits and bobs and we trade them with each other on these ships that are agreed upon that do this and that and the other thing. Now we have an ideological religious framework. And a lot of people would immediately say, yes, Iran. And I would say, yeah, Iran with their mullahs and the Iranian state has a very strict religious code about them. And they view the world, it seems, through a very religious set point. But so does America. And it's crazy to me, the amount of kind of this religious extremism that I see from American politicians. And at first it doesn't seem like it, but if you just look at it, it kind of is. Like a lot of American politicians, and you can be a crazy nut job religious person in your own country, I really don't care. But when it starts beginning to affect other countries just because that's what you believe, I mean, then it crosses a line. So there are many religious people in America, Christians, and I'm fine with Christianity. Jesus is awesome. But what I would like to say is these Christians in America who are in these very powerful positions in politics will say things like, I am a Christian, therefore I support Israel, therefore we have to wipe Iran off the map. It's like, that's a pretty extreme position. It doesn't get explained as an extreme position in the media or whatever, or reporting, or the kind of cards we play when we talk about these things. You think Iran is like this? Well, I think Israel is like this, But it is a very extreme position, and these positions could affect Japan. Now, Japan is a very good supply chain network organizer, but it relies a lot on existing supply chain ideas, shipping and frameworks via G7 and promoting democracy and openness on the high seas and things like that. But China does not. And China and Japan largely share a lot of shipping routes via the sea. But China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, has been expanding into Iran. So with this what-if game we're going to look at. So what I'd like to say is, how does the modern construction of new supply chains angle a country towards a more secure or a less secure future? By looking at what Japan is, what China wants to be, and how a conflict in the Strait of Hormuz, it being closed down, would affect both countries. Now, 30 years ago, we wouldn't expect China to have any say in any of this at all. But now it obviously does. China is a major customer for Iran. And there's a big moves being made for Central Asia. If Iran, China, Russia can all work together, they would be able to turn Central Asia into a transport and logistics hub for the rest of the world and not rely on the existing maritime framework where America has positioned itself as a navy to defend the supply chains of the world. So you factor in China's Belt and Road Initiative, the fact that it wants to use its own currency or exchange currency to currency without the US dollar involved, with its AI programs, with its digital Belt and Road Initiative programs, where you have people acting as consumers using Chinese technology on either end, with Chinese technology delivering the goods to and from countries via Chinese infrastructure. We can kind of see where this is going. So I've kind of set the table there, and it's because I want to be specific, I took a little bit of time to do so. Just to give us a little bit of a more of an official background, I'm going to read a little bit of an editorial from the South China Morning Post. This is it's Hong Kong's rag, but it's, Hong Kong now, anything from there has to be taken with a giant grain of CCP salt. But it's written by somebody named Geneviève Donlelon-May, which does not sound Chinese or anything to me. But this is the opinion piece, and it will just give us a little bit more of accurate background information for today's discussion. Israeli strikes one more challenge for new Iran-China rail corridor. And of course, strikes here is a noun. The Israeli strikes on Iran are one more challenge for this corridor. Between the U.S. restoring maximum pressure on Iran, a goods train from China quietly arrived at a dry port near Tehran, making the first delivery under the new China-Iran rail corridor project. This is published on 18th of June, 2025, by the way. We're recording this mid-June. It had traveled 10,400 kilometers from the Chinese city of Xi'an along a trade corridor aimed at slashing delivery times from 40 days by sea to just 15 days over land. This is an ambitious route, traversing Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and may eventually connect to Africa, the Persian Gulf littoral states, and Europe. I don't know what those littoral states are. Sounds sexy. The rail corridor reflects deepening China-Iran ties amid an increasingly fractured and complex geopolitical environment. Its launch comes as the United States reportedly mulls intercepting and inspecting Iranian oil tankers at sea to cut off its oil sales. Now, just as an aside, this goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about supply chain energy disruption for geopolitical gains. With Russia and Germany making Europe go to America, Taiwan potentially turning Asia to America. Well, if by hook or by crook, Iranian supply chains being disrupted going towards China would drive a wedge or less of a reliance between China and Iran, thereby making the relationship between them a little rougher and preventing a transference of hegemon from the seas backed by the United States to the land backed by China and Russia. Anyways, for the U.S. and Israel, which see Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, Tehran's deeper integration into Eurasian infrastructure is alarming. Critically, it would enable Iran to evade sanctions, bolster its regional influence, and advance broader ambitions, including its contentious nuclear program. If you were Iran right now, who would you become friends with? Who would you become friends with? The G7 or the BRICS? The overland route allows Iran to continue its oil and mineral exports to China and other markets. The corridor also positions Iran as a central transit hub. By integrating rail into the land and sea networks, Iran aims to connect China and Central Asia with Europe via Turkey. It goes on from there. And it kind of says like the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels creating a lot of disruption in the supply chain routes this, supply chain routes that. So we're kind of seeing that China is advancing supply chain routes in a new way to increase its security, to have alternative routes and things like that, and also to create more bilateral relations. It doesn't need to go through a giant mess of G7-backed territories to get its oil from one place to another if it chooses to go via rail. Of course, it's just a brand new rail in a dry port, so we're doing what ifs right now. We're in the sandbox, we're humming and hawing, and we're playing around. So I went back and forth with Grok quite a bit about what I wanted to say about how this would compare to Japan's situation. Oh, by the way, China just built a 1 kilometer long tunnel in Pakistan. So China is burrowing giant transportation tunnels in Pakistan right now. So it's just guys, it goes to say Iran's on board, Pakistan's on board, all these people are on board. But anyways, how does this compare to Japan? To bring it back to Japan. And I'm reading from Grok here because there's a lot of stats and data that I want to make sure is delivered accurately. So China's Belt and Road Initiative rail corridor to Iran, launched in May 2025, provides a strategic edge over Japan in mitigating risks from a potential Strait of Hormuz shutdown, though its impact is limited. One way that Iran could shut down the Strait of Hormuz would be to attack and bomb and mine and deliver lots of damage to ships in the Strait of Hormuz, thereby preventing transit through it and making oil go crazy high. And then Iran and China could agree to a different price to ship it by rail via each other. Now, whether that gets bombed or nuked or whatever is another story. But China, importing about 50% of its oil through the Hormuz, benefits from this Xi'an-Tehran rail. And Japan relies on this strait for 80 to 90% of its 2.75 million barrels per day of oil imports. This is highly vulnerable to disruptions. This route via Xi'an and Tehran, it bypasses maritime choke points like Hormuz and the Malacca Strait, and it takes 15 days compared to 40 by sea. Backed by the 2021 Iran-China $400 billion agreement, this rail enhances China's energy security by facilitating Iranian oil and goods evading sanctions. China's diversified oil sources, including Russia and Africa, further reduce its dependence compared to Japan's 97% reliance on the Middle East. Japan, lacking overland routes, depends on Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline, the UAE's Fujairah pipeline, and U.S. or African imports, but these face capacity constraints and high costs. Japan's 500 million barrel reserves cover 180 days. It's one of the largest in the world, by the way. Yet, restocking is challenging. Rerouting tankers via the Cape of Good Hope adds 10 to 15 days. I think that's Africa. The rail's low capacity, high costs, and geopolitical risks like Israeli strikes in June 2025 limit China's advantage. Both nations face price spikes of $120 to $250 per barrel if the Shiznet hits the Anfe, but China's rail and diverse sources offer greater resilience than Japan's maritime-dependent strategy. So that's kind of what I wanted to say for the supply chain wars, is the position that we are in and how dangerous it is to be so reliant on the United States architecture. Whereas when the United States is looking at Japan, they say, we're great. We're just amazing. And it's true. But then they go back to America and they say, I'm a Christian who supports Israel and we have to flatten Iran. They don't even consider Japan for a second. Or if they do, they kind of go, well, they'll become a customer of the United States. And that's even better. It's even better for Jesus. It's kind of the way they might consider it. So with the supply chain route in mind, the supply chain wars in mind, we have Japan having the double-edged sword of relying on America for defense, but then not having its ties to America consider Japanese interests when they get sucked into their religious fervors. So there's this logic that gets spread throughout the world of supply chain routes and 10 million barrels a day here and 50 million barrels a day there. And you want this much and I want this. Let's divvy it up. And you have this price. I have this price. But then somebody in there goes, Allahu Akbar. And then somebody else goes, Jesus for the Jews. And Japan is kind of left going, fuck, what do we do? So hopefully Japan can become a little bit more energy dependent at the giant risk of turning on its nuclear facilities is one way out. And I hope they do, because whether Japan is relying on Israeli drones for its advanced weapon systems or defense systems, or whether Japan is relying on massive amounts of energy imports from the Middle East, these become larger and larger risks as time goes on. And while it's okay to have some risk as part of the basket of imports and exports that you deal with on a daily basis, having 90% of that basket be allocated to kind of a region that's a basket case provides an example of perhaps why Japan should be pursuing more independent resource and energy options in the future that don't get it snagged into a religious intersection of just kindling everywhere and people walking around with torches looking to burn each other up. So that's kind of today's look at the supply chain war. I think that's interesting. It's a giant what if, and it's like I say, we can look at the news or relations when Americans come to Japan and they start talking, and it's like, it's great, it's amazing, and it is. But what happens when that same person goes back to America and starts looking at Israel and Tehran and things like that, and how the decisions that they make there will affect Japan in the future, and how much of a non-thought an important ally suddenly becomes. Die for the war, everybody move. Die for the good, die for the war, die for the war. Let's take a look at Japan Society 5.0.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom.
Dude, did you hear that?
Society 5.0. A technology-based, human-centered society.
Whee!
The fourth industrial revolution will raise our standard of living and solve various challenges we face.
No way.
It will, for example, free us from the stress of driving, allowing us to safely visit anyone, anytime. We will have access to the latest medical advancements at a low cost.
All right, so Japan Society 5.0 is just an umbrella term for AI programs, drones, infrastructure, all these things. It's deeply tied into two things, which one is the World Economic Forum and green initiatives and SDGs and things like that. This country in Japan is basically now an SDG repeater station. And so everything has to be SDG. And I can get in trouble for saying that, or people can say, hey, how you doing? And then they listen to me say, SDGs are kind of weird. And they go, stay away from that guy. He's pointing the finger at the cult. And I'm in the cult, even though I don't want to be. Nobody asked me to be. 10 years ago, I was just doing my job. Now I have an SDG pin in my ass. So a lot of this stuff with AI right now, I find to be totally fascinating and at the same time ridiculously goofy. I get so much news about AI now. When I first started this podcast 5 years ago, it was almost nothing. I was working in big tech at the time as a teacher, an AI teacher for a telecommunications company. And I would talk about AI to people and people would just look right through me as if I was talking about, I don't know, what it didn't matter to them. But now those same people are like, AI, did you hear about AI? And I'm like, yeah, what is this? But so this has been going on for a while now. And the large language models are amazing. Undoubtedly, I use them all the time. But how they are affecting jobs, and a lot of people are saying AI is going to take our jobs. And at first, like, you think about jobs as being useful, like the accountant or the lawyer or the doctor or the person even cleaning up a construction site or a garbage man or something like that. We can all kind of go, hey, are they really going to take those jobs? But we don't think about all the stupid jobs that most people do. And this is why I find it totally ridiculous. And maybe these jobs, while they do provide people with income and stuff like that, I've had my share of losing jobs that people actually need as a teacher working in the private industry. It's just school's closed, you're gone, but I'm useful. Doesn't matter. But a lot of these people will say, well, that's too bad, but they go back to their jobs. What's their job? Well, what about somebody who writes press releases? Their job is now totally in threat from AI. But how often do you walk around caring about press releases and who writes them? And how often have you thought in your life, well, that's a job that should not be replaced? This comes to us from AI Smiley, and I've had Grok rewrite it. I was using machine translation and just reading the websites, but these websites are pretty wonky. So now I just have Grok rewrite it so it's easier. Disclaimer. Japan AI Co. Limited has unveiled a groundbreaking press release writing agent. An AI tool that cuts press release production time from 10 hours to just 2 hours, reducing workload by 80%. Developed in-house, the AI automates drafting by incorporating PR team workflows, paraphrasing technical terms, and removing subjective language. Yeah, because you never see subjective language in a press release. This innovation frees up time for media relations, enhances collaboration with development teams, and optimizes PR resource allocation. Japan AI plans to further tailor this solution to address diverse business challenges, driving efficiency and innovation in corporate communications. All right, the corporate communications are very important. Press releases are needed, blah, 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 blah. But this is what I think is crazy. People are coming out onto a stage on a video that I'm looking at on my phone. They come out and they're like, AI, the revolution is here. Like, we've developed an AI thing and it's going to disrupt everything. You're like, oh my God, finally the AI is here and it's disrupting everything. What's it going to disrupt? No more press releases written by humans. We're doing it by AI now. And everyone's like, ah! And I kind of go, this is flipping dumb. Where's the exit? As if I need, all of these people are on LinkedIn all day. As if I need 50,000 people on LinkedIn screaming into my ears. And that's why I included this at the beginning, is because most of what I see with AI now, it resembles just corporations sniffing their own asses about how awesome they're going to make their own AI to increase meetings by 300% by driving efficiency models using AI. And AI is supposed to be this revolution that changes the world. What does it do? It automates press releases. Okay. So this is my disclaimer. I said I wouldn't cover it, but I'm covering it to say why not to cover it. I said I wouldn't cover it last week. And I wrote these lyrics for a song that I included on this Womp cast, a collection of songs. I do AI music podcasts as well. Check them out. It's a way to have fun and put the AI into our hands so that we use it and it doesn't use us. And it also creates a shared collective experience of listening to music via podcasts instead of just being atomized by the AI. So it's an exercise in dominance is what it is. Dominating the AI. And I wrote these lyrics to a song because I just kind of got sick of all of this whiz bang stuff. And then what does it do? Something I really don't care about. And the world goes, no way. All right, I had it loaded up. I'm going to play it now. This song is called With AI, and it's about how stupid corporate AI is.
Flows with its
IoT coupon. Back when I was a teacher for AI at a telecommunications company, I was teaching the vice presidents of this giant corporation. One of them was in charge of IoT for the whole company, the Internet of Things. And he kept on saying, it's great technology. It's very hard to monetize. And I would research topics for the classes and things like that. And I always kind of noticed that in its infancy, this is maybe 7-8 years ago now, IoT coupon was just like the way to get people to try to use their phones via IoT networks to use whatever it was. But basically you needed to get somebody to sign into some sort of thing via a phone that accesses an IoT network. And if you did all that stuff, you get a 50 yen off for a coffee at 7-Eleven or something like that. And it was kind of a running joke. Whenever he proposed something or suggested something, I was like, well, is there a coupon? Because an IoT coupon will just change the world. We have all of this technology all over the place so that you can get a discount for your coffee at a chain shop. So anyways, there is this ridiculous consumer aspect to it. Business to business, enterprise solutions, all infrastructure. I see that's more of the interesting side to me. It's more of the big boy stuff. It's not just people tapping on their phones and showing it to me and going, look, it's automating a press release. So that's what we're going to get into now. The next few stories are a little bit, they're not so tactile, but it's infrastructural developments with Society 5.0. And a big part of this is 5G and soon to be 6G. We need these telecommunication systems and repeaters and wireless systems set up so that the AI Society 5.0 can come to fruition. It's a wireless society largely with algorithms and data transmission and monitoring and surveillance going on via these nodes and networks, and we need the infrastructure for that. It's fun just to look at the crazy thing and go, wow, that's crazy. But we're going to look at the infrastructure right now. So this comes to us from, where was it? I can't even remember. It's ktai.com or something like that. I got these via Japanese websites, translating them into English and then summarizing them with Grok. One thing that Japanese websites like to do is they'll say, look at this amazing new thing. And then they'll go through a large history and then somebody talking about it. And it takes they repeat the same information in the headline over and over and over again. So I have to do this. Otherwise I go crazy. Thank you, Grok. Breakthrough 5G railway test on Tokyo Metro Marunouchi line. One of my favorite lines. I live next to one of those Metro Marunouchi line stations. On Friday, June 20th, a successful demonstration of a 5G-based railway system has been conducted on the Tokyo Metro Marunouchi line. This test utilized a prototype communication platform designed for future rail systems, connecting train operations and monitoring tools via public and local 5G networks. The focus was on a next-generation train control method, marking Japan's first use of 5G on a commercial rail line for this purpose. I'm going to stop it right there. For those IoT engineers who are upset that there's not enough acronyms, the link to this story in its original form will be at MatthewPMBigelow.com. I link everything I talk about up at the website, MatthewPMBigelow.com. And you can get your more technical breakdowns of the technology that's being used at that time. IoT engineers are known for being intensely persnickety people because they do things nobody cares about, and it takes a lot of effort. And the whole end result is you get somebody a 50 yen coupon for a cup of coffee they never wanted. That's your job, IoT engineers. Now go do it. The test confirmed that 5G delivers stable real-time communication, enabling smooth operation of train controls, maintenance tracking via remote sensors, and security cameras. This suggests 5G can replace older systems with a more reliable high-speed network. Kind of like what China is doing with its supply chain networks via Iran. China and Japan is building up its 5G. The benefits are notable. 5G's near instant response times enhance safety and efficiency by optimizing train spacing and schedules. For dense urban areas, this is very important. And you can simplify the analysis of of how dense things are and how close trains are and so on. Its high data capacity supports remote monitoring to predict equipment failures, reducing repair costs while also making rural route maintenance more feasible. This could expand service access, and practical applications include better urban scheduling, extended rural service, improved safety with automation and cameras, and data to shape global rail standards. Global. The organizers plan to share these findings with industry groups later, aiming to advance a connected, efficient railway network across Japan and beyond, apparently. So that's one aspect of 5G. We're never really told what 5G is supposed to be. We're told like you can download a movie in a second, but everybody streams movies these days. So 5G is kind of it's like 4G plus. We all use 4G for our civilian applications, and then 5G is more of an infrastructural application for things like trains, hospitals, construction, and so on like that. But it needs to be built. So an aspect of building this out took place earlier this year, and there's basically two versions of 5G. There's the 5G millimeter wave, and then there's the 5G general wave. And the millimeter wave is really good for high transmission speeds, but it's very limited in range and it's easily disrupted. Whereas the general 5G range it's still very fast, but it's not as fast. And one good thing about millimeter wave is the amount of people or devices that can connect to it at once. So this gets into 5G millimeter wave coverage enhancement in Nishi Shinjuku. This goes back to earlier this year and kind of a little bit late last year. These things take a long time to expand and plan. Infrastructural developments, you have to source the devices, you have to plan them, you have to map them, you have to have meetings about them. Then you have to have follow-up about what happened in the improvements and confirm all of that and then do a retest and things like that. So you might say this went back to early or late last year or early this year, but it's a very long plan, and it's a piece of the plan and the time and place that it's taking in. So KDDI, a major telecom, and Kyocera, is that a chip maker? Announced the development of a novel wireless relay system designed to expand millimeter wave communication areas for advanced 5G and prospective 6G networks, with a goal of operational implementation by fiscal 2025. KDDI and Kyocera conducted a field test in Tokyo's Nishi Shinjuku district, installing 22 repeaters on streetlights on June 20th, 2025. But the plan goes back to like late last year. That's what I'm saying. The system forms a mesh topology on its own, adjusting to environmental changes such as construction or vegetation growth by choosing efficient relay paths. This system combines transmission and reception capabilities into a single module, dynamically adjusting functions based on the radio frequency environment. The repeaters are compact, measuring 21 centimeters by 21 centimeters by 24 centimeters and weighing about 5 pounds. This is 70% smaller and lighter than standard base stations, and they're powered solely by electrical input without requiring backhaul connections, thus lowering deployment and maintenance expenses. This is actually a major part. There are these tiny little things that you can hook up to anything, point them around each other. They make a node in a mesh node, and now you have something that's easily disruptible to be much less so. The 5G millimeter wave is a subset of 5G using high-frequency bands from 24 to 100 gigahertz, offering ultra-fast data speeds and low latency, though its range is limited to about 100 to 200 meters due to high signal attenuation from obstacles like buildings and trees. And it struggles in adverse weather such as rain. I even heard like even shirts can get in the way of it. Unlike lower frequency 5G, which provides wider coverage but slower speed, millimeter wave delivers multi-gigabit speeds up to 10 gigabits per second and supports dense device connections, making it ideal for urban hotspots. Yeah, Nishi Shinjuku, lots of offices, lots of tourists, people coming and going. A lot of stress on the IT infrastructure there. The idea is that with these easily deployable nodes, you'll be able to accommodate use in real time with 5G millimeter wave. The test increased coverage on Nishi Shinjuku roads for millimeter wave from 33% to 99%. The consistent high bandwidth communication was validated with plans to continue trials until March 31st, 2025. It's already gone, focusing on high traffic zones like urban centers, transit hubs, and arenas for future applications. As you can see, it doesn't really sound like a consumer thing, right? Urban centers, that's infrastructure, city infrastructure, transit hubs, and arenas for future application. Arenas would be you can order your hot dog and a drone will deliver it to you. And it'll give you a coupon. So these are kind of the 5G applications that are going on in Japan right now. Requires a lot of talent and planning. And as you can see from that previous one, it was saying late last year, early this year, March and June. It's a very difficult thing to pull off. And I respect the amount of wireless and physical application, this fusion of wireless and physical. I quite like it. I'm a big fan of it. That's why I like doing this podcast, of having like these microphones and devices that feed into a computer that communicates via wireless signal, even inputting wireless signals via the analog equipment to create something. I don't know, it's just kind of interesting as a human thing to do. The last one is a follow-up for HAPS, High Altitude Platform or something like that. It's those giant wings in the stratosphere designed to deliver internet wirelessly, so you don't need a network of wired base stations on the ground level. I helped out with this project a little bit when I was to the telecom industry, helping people get into it by just giving them briefings and things to study about and maybe some advice of what to say in interviews and stuff like that. Interesting part of my life. A significant advancement at the recent World Radio Communication Conference in Dubai for nerds saw 163 nations endorse Japan's proposal to standardize HAPS frequencies at 1.7 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz, 2.6 gigahertz, and 700 to 900 megahertz for Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas, paving the way for international deployment. Japan is pursuing a bold strategy to reclaim telecommunications leadership by launching solar-powered unmanned aerial vehicles with 5G base stations in 2025. These high-altitude platform stations, or HAPS, will operate at 20 to 25 kilometers up in the air and will cover a footprint of connectivity of about 200 kilometers, which far exceeds the 3 to 10 kilometer range of ground stations. These sky wings are ideal for remote islands, coastal zones, and disaster backup. It's important for Japan. Japanese firms are testing HAPS technology, with SoftBank enabling a 5G call between Rwanda and Japan using a stratospheric drone. Partnerships like NTT and SkyPerfect JSAT Space Compass aim for commercial devices and services by 2025, showcased at the Osaka World Expo. This targets competition with Chinese and Western exporters while addressing the digital gap in developing nations. HAPS cost-effective coverage could boost connectivity in emerging markets, potentially restoring Japan's telecom prominence within 3 years. So there's that. I was going to say something else. Yeah, when I was helping these people out with their English for this HAPS project, one thing that you just never would ever imagine is, so these guys get this giant Skywing for 5G. It's a solar power Skywing. It's an unmanned aerial vehicle. How do you get it into the air? It's a telecommunications network company. It's not an airport. Well, you have to start calling airports and asking them to use their runways to see if you can launch experimental sky drones into the stratosphere. They're like, how do I ask this? I'm like, I'll do my best to give you some advice. And I would, because there's always tricks and can use. When you think about the insanity of such requests, what is it? Well, it's a request to use somebody else's stuff. So then you have to think about what language would you use to request that type of thing. And the answer is would. Would I be able to? Could I? What would it take to, or something like that? What would it take for me to use your runways to launch experimental stratospheric wings? Best regards. Anyways, so that's going to be Japan Society 5.0 for today. Infrastructural development and analysis of 5G technology. And as you can see, for the most part, it's not for consumer markets. It's largely for large-scale infrastructure, stadiums, and so on. And of course, consumer markets will be included at downstream from there. But a lot of the cost and deployment and services and these new enterprise systems coming into play aren't really operating at the consumer level. So that's what I wanted to say for today for Japan Society 5.0.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society. Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things.
With AI. Let's look at WEF in Japan. It's not that bad. It's not. You will eat the bugs, the tourists. You eat the bugs. How is Japan dealing with tourists, according to the World Economic Forum? You have nothing as a be happy, then you eat the bugs and go home. No. So I just found this by looking at it was coincidentally a World Economic Forum, which has 666 as part of its logo if you look at it in one way or another. Quick, get some religious fanatics on the line. The title here is How Japan is Redesigning Tourism to Benefit Local Communities. The quick answer here is surveillance. And of course, that's why the World Economic Forum loves it. They love surveillance. Over-tourism continues to pose a significant challenge in tourist destinations, and Japan is no exception. While various measures have been implemented, addressing the root causes requires innovative and sustainable solutions. So like I said, Japan is basically an SDG captured society. So everything it's going to do, it's going to actually shoehorn all of this sustainability into all of that 5G stuff down the road. Just you wait. Before it becomes into the consumer's hand, there will be an SDG layer right above it. In 2024, the number of international visitors to Japan reached about 40 million. Marking a record high and a 47.1% increase compared to the previous year. Yeah, I'm feeling it. It sucks. In 2023, foreign visitor spending totaled around 5.3 trillion yen, a 10% increase from the year before. From 2019, before the pandemic, stupid pandemic. In response, Japanese governments set a target to welcome 60 million inbound tourists by 2030. And Prime Minister Ishiba instructed the government to make plans to achieve this goal. Quick, everybody, vote them back in so you can complain about too many foreigners coming to Japan. As international tourism in Japan grows, about 73% are concentrated in Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, Hokkaido, and Fukuoka. And according to a survey, 59.7% reported that their residential areas were crowded or somewhat crowded in these areas. Meanwhile, the concentration of tourists in popular destinations like Kyoto have become so popular that there's more foreign tourists than Japanese tourists now. So what are they trying to do? Japan Airlines introduced a campaign in 2024 to further strengthen regional tourism, offering free domestic flights to international travelers arriving on overseas flights. Okay. Visualizing congestion and information dissemination. In Okinawa, the Okimeguri Tourism Optimization app leverages artificial intelligence to predict congestion at tourist spots using crowd data and weather information from previous years. Travelers can select the date, time, expected weather, and location to view estimated congestion levels and event information. Sounds really useful, to be honest. It's not real time, but it's based on existing data. Mount Hakodate in Hokkaido implemented a system to visualize congestion to address the issue. Digital signage will tell you where to go instead. In the supplementary budget, Japan's government allocated about 16 billion yen for mitigating tourism, and the Japanese tourism agency is also implementing sustainable tourism promotion and mitigating over-tourism. This includes collecting and analyzing crowd data and visualizing congestion levels. So the answer is AI surveillance. And if you've ever read COVID-19, The Great Reset, written by Klaus Schwab, founder of the World Economic Forum, who meets regularly with Japan's key leaders, there's a lot of overlap between that book and Japan's new economic policies. In 2025, selected projects include the development of a plan and building a system for dispersing foreign tourists within Kumamoto Prefecture with grants of $80 million. So they give out these grants, and the grants are totaled a lot, and it spreads to regional areas. But what the end result is more surveillance of AI digital surveillance in regional areas. And that's why I think the World Economic Forum really likes this idea and why they're actually reporting on it, and why those in the industry who would read this type of thing would read it as such. Oh, there's public-private market share increasing in regional areas of Japan to have AI surveillance on foreign residents to mitigate over-tourism. So there's a lot of money in tourism. There's a lot of money in AI. There's a lot of money from the Japanese government funding this stuff. Now's your chance to go in and make a splash. And if you can deliver AI that monitors groups of people and gets them to opt into using it for regional travel, quote unquote, well, then now you've just made a successful Japan Society 5.0 product, and you can slap some SDG labels onto that, make a few $1 million, call yourself a success story, and buy a house somewhere you've always wanted to buy it. But what do you leave behind? You leave behind AI surveillance in place where it used to not exist, so that tourists don't go to the main places like Kyoto. So basically the tourists are acting as like a viral host, spreading AI surveillance into regional areas by initiatives proposed by the government, so that we have a more coast to coast aspect of a Japan Society 5.0, so that's not concentrated in Nishi Shinjuku with their 5G, or within the subway tunnels with their 5G, but that these applications, once studied and perfected, will be able to be rolled out with the tourists with their phones attaching to these systems in real time for basically a Japan Society 5.0 AI enhanced and enforced digital map of human activity for public health and for public scrutiny on behalf of automated systems being set into place as we speak. And that's going to be Japan for today. Yes, the tourists are viral hosts. They're all on their phones. They'll have bad tattoos. They have weird fashion now. Like they saw someone on Instagram that they like, so they went and bought their crappy clothes. And they're not in their rooms with 12 filters on them anymore, so they're just sweating in these uncomfortable, tight clothes. And you see their butt cracks and their tattoos with their phones spreading to regional areas. Zombie cultures. All right, thanks for listening. Make sure to go to MatthewPMBigelow.com. Leave us a donation at paypal.me/JapanWUT. PayPal.me/JapanWUT. Sorry, I'm thinking about those sweaty ass cracks, and I need donations because I saw that. So thank you very much. Have a great one. See you next time with a very heartful and warmful Ja Mata. No.